Welcome to the world of sexy witches, vampires filled with lust, buff pixie fairies, and deadly tomatoes. Today we're talking The Dead Witch Walking with Chan.
Hi.
It's been inevitable that you had to join me eventually on this book adventure and collectively mispronounce a word in a Canadian accent. Can you do it?
Which word?
Which word do you think it is? Book.
Oh, God. Book. Thank you very much.
So, as usual, we're gonna do like a non-spoiler impression and then the spoiler section. This book is a part of a large series that you've been a fan of for a long time.
Yay! Sort of. My mom's a big fan.
Has your mom read all the books?
Probably because she's insane and she reads so many books. I think she's read thousands of books. I don't know.
Before we get into this book, what kind of books are you into?
I actually like a lot of young adult books. Like, books where the protagonist is actually kind of young, but an adult could read them because they kind of push their limits on what's okay. Like sometimes, for instance, there's a book I like called Olivia Kidney and the Exit Academy. And it's about the main character is a 12-year-old girl, but the book talks about some things or has some like imagery or concepts that are definitely for at least adults to talk about with children. So it's hard to describe, but I enjoy those more because I think they're more trying to explore your imagination.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. You also talked about the series called his Dark Materials and the first one, the Golden Compass, which was also a movie.
Yeah, and the protagonist there, 11-year-old girl. So like I'm not obsessed with children. I just like, but those books are usually trying to change your mind or do something very imaginative.
Which I thought the like Golden Compass was just a not childish, but like a young style, like adventure, jolly adventure. That's what I imagine. And you told me it's more like a philosophical, religious pondering about the universe, existence, things like that.
Yeah.
Which I was surprised.
Yeah, and like how science could relate to, more of a scientific approach to finding out our existence versus religious. It's all kinds of stuff. It's just but in like sort of a fantasy science fiction kind of style. So yeah, I enjoy things that are supernatural or fantasy and full of imagination, and I often think these books do it better. But today's book has, a protagonist around our age, but again, it did something in this kind of manner, so I was happy with it, and that's why I read it.
I asked you to recommend the book because I have been really enjoying asking people about their favorite books and then doing a podcast about it, and I was feeling very undecided how to feel about this one when I started reading it, but it's the same with me every time I start a book. I'm kind of like put off by it because I have to understand this world, but then it really grew on me, so I really enjoyed this. It was different than I expected. It wasn't your usual like young adult. I always think of this movie series, and I don't remember the name, and I always think of it's Divergent.
Oh, the Divergent Insurgent. Yeah, I don't always enjoy like I like the really sort of like 11, 12-year-old protagonists because they don't get into the teenage bullshit. When you start to get into teenage bullshit, I'm done because I don't care about your teenage love, sort of extreme, end of the world, star-crossed lover nonsense. Fuck you. Forget it. Get over it. You need to control your emotions. So I enjoy the before and after.
Every time somebody says Divergent, I always trying very hard not to say detergent. So it's
That's what there should be like a parody series. Like
should be a detergent.
It was Divergent, it should be Detergent, and then Insurgent, it should be, I don't know, just something.
Yeah, so in the group of detergents, Twilights, like Hunger Games, and like this Maze Runner and all those. Yeah. I think The Dead Witch Walking is not in this group.
No.
Because it's more like an adult version, very sexually charged, this book.
Yeah. Like the main character is 30 or almost 30, something like that. Yes. So it's you're out of this teenage
But it still
zone.
feels like more of a fun, like, cheerful, like, more lighthearted. Even though people die, there's a bunch of gore unexpectedly.
Yeah.
It's still more like a lighthearted action thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I like it because it keeps like the imagination of like the books I talked about earlier, but it puts it in a more adult setting. So you don't have to do like a lot of books where it has the adult 30 or more as the protagonist. It's always something very like boring or serious. And here, I guess the character is still going through these, changes and such that adults do, like midlife crisis kind of thing, but it's not, I don't know, it's actually interesting.
So to set the world, this one is called urban fantasy, which I didn't know it's a thing.
Urban dark fantasy.
Okay. We won't call this dark. It wasn't really.
But dark fantasy means you included things like vampires, werewolves, so dark fantasy
in my mind,
includes the night.
Including dark means like the Broken Earth trilogy we talked about previously on this podcast, and it was like some heavy like...
Well, that's dark. There's dark.
Yes.
That's a genre, and dark fantasy means you included the creatures of the night.
Okay, so
that's all.
Okay, so it's urban vampire fantasy. That's what you're saying.
Yeah,
It's dark, but not like hit you in the...
It's urban dark fantasy.
Okay. But yeah, so coming back to what we were saying, there are 16 books in the series. Oh my god. So Chen told me the first book's kind of fine, and then the second, third book gets better, and then how many have you read?
I think I read 4 books, and I was kind of annoyed about something I want to talk about here, but with the 5th book, so I just stopped reading.
Okay. So I was absolutely sure I'm not reading the second book because I was just like, what is this? I'm just gonna give it a go. And now I really enjoyed the ending. I have to say the later part of the book, I was very much positively surprised. It was like really like the action and the climax, and there was so much going on, and it seemed kind of realistic in the sense that the main character is an idiot, but in a way that's not infuriating. Like in the Broken Earth series, the character's an idiot, but it's infuriating and you hate her so hard. In this book, it's kind of amusing and it serves the plot well, and it seems kind of realistic.
And she points it out when she was like, God, that was dumb, or that was stupid, or what was I thinking? Like she knows.
She reminded me in parts of a friend of ours who's been on the podcast. So
who could it be?
How are you doing?
No, she didn't say it. Maybe no names. But I like this character in the book more.
Okay, now I have to cut this.
Exactly. Don't say names.
So, to tell you a bit about the writer, her name is Kim Harrison.
But it's not a real name.
And the real name is Dawn Cook. And if you have a fake name, why isn't it a cooler name? Like Kim Harrison is such a generic name.
Because the point is not to be cool. When these sorts of writers make these fake names, they're trying to put themselves in a different mindset of a different person that writes this other like books. So they're not trying to make something crazy. They're just trying to make a different persona of themselves to think about and write in that way. And it's also a way to sell more books as well. If you have a lot of different names and you're publishing under different names, maybe someone's obsessed with reading Dawn Cook, whatever, something books, and maybe someone else is like, well, I'm tired of reading their books, and they write something else. So you just make lots of names.
Oh, okay. Well, she started with sci-fi, then the urban fantasy we talked about, also adapted into young adult and traditional fantasy. But the most popular series is called The Hollows, and that's the one we're talking about. Yeah. And like I said, this one is the very first one that kicked this whole thing off. And there were 16 books and also 12 more books like on the side.
Oh, I didn't know.
It's like so much crap. So I wrote this down. So there were 4 prequels. And I like how they mark these books on Goodreads. It's like 0, then 0.2, 0.3, 0.5. And then and there's like sequels that are in between the main books. So it's like 2.5, and then there's like 10.1, 10.5, 13.1.
Okay, it's been going on too long.
It's just insane. And she's been naming her books based on Clint Eastwood movies.
Yeah, I don't know if she managed to do all books that way, but definitely like a lot of them are, like the first book is called Dead Witch Walking, so maybe it was his Dead Man Walking or something. So
I wanted to tell you a few of the names of the Hollow series, and let's see if Chen can guess the name of the Clint Eastwood movie.
Well, I don't know his movies.
The first
I'll
one,
guess. Okay.
The first one, you're gonna be it's gonna be very simple.
But I got it just now, right?
Okay, so the second one then. I mean, the first one I'm gonna tell you.
Okay.
So the second book is called The Good, the Bad, and the Undead.
So the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. The next book is called Every Which Way But Dead.
Every which way but down.
It's but loose.
Oh,
with Clint
damn.
Eastwood.
Almost.
There's the Fistful of Charms.
Wasn't Fistful of Charm? Like
No.
no S? Oh,
No.
let me try again. The Fistful of Fury.
That's a better movie.
What is it?
It's a Fistful of Dollars.
Oh, that's not good.
Then there is For a Few Demons More.
For a few dollars more.
Yeah,
for a few
you got it.
coins
You got
more.
it.
Okay.
I knew you'd get it. And last one I have written down was White Witch, Black Curse.
Hold on. White man, black horse.
Almost. It's White Hunter, Black Heart.
Oh, I thought he was just riding, like a black horse, like cause like a western or something.
But you almost got it, so it's good. So I was looking at the cover, the book covers, which are very sexualized, as you might expect. I like the taglines. Each book cover has a different tagline. So I'm gonna read you a bunch of taglines for this book.
Which one?
The book we're discussing today. So we're discussing the first one called Dead Witch Walking. And on the first cover I found, it says in big bold letters, "You will love this."
It's a very generic one, though.
It's awful. Then the second cover I found, it said, "In the hollows, vampires come out to play, and it's always witching hour."
Oh, that one's bad. The other one is generic. This one's just bad.
And the last one I like the best. "A bounty hunter and witch with serious sex appeal and an attitude. She'll bring back alive, dead or undead."
Oh, clever.
So that's why on this episode I'm gonna award sexual tension points.
Okay.
Because we did depression points, creativity points, and hatred points.
But I haven't read this in a long time, so you have to remind me of
Yes,
things.
we're gonna get into the nitty gritty of sexual tension with vampires.
Okay.
I have it all written down. I've been taking a lot of notes reading this book. I was very amused. So before we discuss all the spoilers, I want to just talk about the idea in general and hopefully help you if you want to read this or not.
Okay.
The premise is that there are real people and magical people. Like
Real people.
Yeah.
Regular people.
Okay, so regular, normal people.
There's a bunch of muggles, and then there's non-muggles.
Which I forgot to write down what they call those.
Oh, the regular people?
The regular
I
people.
forgot
But the
what they-
non-regular people, they call them inlanders.
Oh, yeah.
Which I don't know why they call inlanders. They never explained that.
I
But
thought the inlanders were the regular people. They do explain it. You just weren't paying attention. They explain how there was the move out of, like, because they live in the hollows. Like, they, like, the separation
Yeah.
between them. So they
So-
call them by how they live, inland. Or...
okay. Well, one way or the other, this world is basically a modern world with all the technology and everything, modern lifestyle, going to the office and police and FBI and all of that. But something happened. There was an incident that caused people to be scared of tomatoes, like I mentioned in the beginning. Why are people scared of tomatoes, Jen?
Well, but that's an important part of the book. That's part of the spoilers.
That's how the book starts.
Yeah, but it's not right there at the beginning. But just like there's just something that happens with some like scientists, and they were doing some experiment, and I don't remember why they were doing it. Maybe Philip does, but what they did ended up doing two things, both killing a lot of non-normal people, so like what we'd call like
I think
like
that's the inlanders.
Okay, well the inlanders, the vampires, witches, whatever, this group, it killed a lot of them and also exposed that they existed to the regular population.
Yeah.
So like a lot of types of fairy tale creatures or folklore creatures died because of this. And at the same time, everyone was exposed. I'm not sure why.
They
were
don't say that in the
exposed,
book, and I think it's a huge plot point, like to the end of the first book, and then it's gonna come up, I'm sure, in the series.
It does come up a little bit later, but
I don't consider this to be a spoiler. It's literally the first chapter, and it's not like anything plot-wise. It's just like, okay, this happened. It's like one line. And
they explain it later in some other parts. So that's why I was saying I think it's if they only said a line, then no problem. So they mention it later.
So basically, there was an event called The Turn, and something happened, and a bunch of people died, and many of them, more of the regular people died than the inlanders, the magic people. I was going to call them magic people.
Oh, more regular people died? Oh, I thought it was...
So basically, before this event, nobody knew that the folklore fairy tale creature people
were really there.
It was just like legends. But after this event, they came out of the closet, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you're right. That's why it killed a lot of normal people, and they took it as their time, like in their numbers,
actually say that they exist.
Yeah, because their numbers were more even, or they had an advantage, and so they thought it was a good time to expose themselves, because it's like, well, they can't do anything about us. But both sides lost a lot of people.
Yeah, like Chen said, they were in the minority, but now they took this as a chance to be equal, because they don't really get into any like discrimination like against the inlanders. But I feel like that is something, because normal people obviously are not comfortable with witches and vampires around them.
They're kind of the ones that people are sort of racist against. That's why they live in the hollows. A hollow, maybe if people don't know, is a type of, if you have, for example, like mountains and like that are close together, so little miniature valleys, like literally just a road can go through them, and they go through a forest, that's a hollow. So they've been pushed out, you're right, out of the inland, so people don't like them being around them, so they live outside of town.
So that's the premise. And there's this company called Inlander Security. And that's an organization that employs just inlanders, magic people. I'm just going to say magic people. It's easy to understand. They employ magic people to catch magic people. Because obviously the regular police cannot do anything about vampires and witches and magic when there's something happens. And so they have this policeman or runner, they say. And she is employed to basically keep magic people in check. And she is sent out to like menial tasks and just arresting fairies and leprechauns and things like that. And that's the main character. So her name is Rachel Morgan, and she's a witch. So in this world there are witches, vampires, pixies, like werewolves, demons. And I like this, and I don't like it in the book, because one of the things I really liked was the tension and like guessing who's what, because you meet a person and you don't know if it's a normal person, if it's like a magical person, if it's like a otherworldly creature from the ever after, which is also mentioned and not very much explained.
They explain it more later.
Yeah, you're gonna be saying this, I'm sure, because it gets explained in the series.
The ever after is pretty cool.
So it's very intriguing to have the first impressions of somebody you meet on the basis of what can they do, what even are they having a spell to be disguised as somebody or something else. And at the same time, it's never really explained what any of these things mean. Like, for instance, one of the characters that's the best friend of the main character is a vampire, and they slowly reveal more and more things about vampires. Some of them are not what you expect, and it's kind of like, whoa, what does this mean? Like, that there are very interesting rules to all these creatures, is what I'm saying. But you learn them like after the fact. So when things are happening with the creatures, you're like, how does this make any sense? So that's kind of weird. But at the same time, it would be boring if they started the interaction with each character with a set of rules. So it makes sense. And I also meant to say that the main character's best friend, so she's like a half vampire. And I wrote it down, and I'm super confused about this. Maybe you can shed some light on this.
The important fact is that there is different classes in vampires, and if you're born a vampire, it's a much higher status for you than if you were just bitten and turned into a vampire. So she's got a very high class about.
So I just wanted to say this is a good example of why I don't like and like this, because so the best friend, so she has a father and mother. She's a living vampire, which means she can be exposed to sunlight, she can eat and all this, but eventually if she dies, she turns into an undead vampire, and that means she will like have to drink blood. Now she just can choose to drink blood, and it's like a long list of things that this means, and it's kind of irritating, because you like, reading this story and she's just doing things in the plot, like she's deciding based on these things or behaving in certain ways, and you're like, why is any of this? I also wanted to say that this book is kind of in your face. I really like the approach of the characters. One of the most popular phrases is double damn. So the main character is like, damn, double damn, triple damn, something's happening. A thing that I always wished would happen in a fantasy story happened finally. And that was that a wizard got punched in the face. Because there's always a scene, like in every fantasy movie, especially Harry Potter. Like, it's a fight and they're like waving their arms and casting a spell and doing all this bullshit. It takes time. Why doesn't somebody just slap them? Like it would be so easy to slap those stupid wand out of their hand, or just like slap them in the face or kick them in the balls or something. So that exactly happens here, and I'm so happy. It was like a fight, and I was so ecstatic that finally a wizard got punched, and it worked perfectly. So yes, please, more of this. I was very amused. I don't remember this in any sci-fi fantasy. Do you remember something like that anywhere else?
No, I think that's the charm of the urban fantasy
Yeah.
cosplay.
So they have magic, but they're not invincible magic, which I appreciate so much. So the rules to the magic like are not so defined, and it's so broad and so many things. But it's not easy to do magic, and it's easy to interrupt it, which I appreciate very much.
But I forgot in this book, are wizards humans or magic?
That's another thing I have here written down. So the main character is a witch.
Yeah, but she's not human, so which
That-
is a thing.
And what does that mean? Like, is she not a human? So
They explain in a very creative way that I
Really?
think the audience wants to read.
so that might come up in the future book.
Oh, it does.
Okay.
So she's not human, but the wizard, I forgot. Like, for instance, in this story, a sorcerer or sorceress is a human that does magic. So, like, they can read books and
But
do
then-
magic and things. If
And
they
then
want.
they like scoff at somebody, and they're like, "Oh, he's just a warlock. Fuck off." And I'm like, "What does that mean?"
Yeah, but a warlock is sort of similar to a witch in a way, but I forgot how they
So
were
I thought
different.
warlock was a human who can cast magic, which also happens.
I
There's so
think
many of these.
Well, there's
Yeah.
I think a witch it's a thing, but a warlock I thought was a type of like a lower class witch.
Okay.
But I saw it and I can't remember. But I know for sure a sorcerer and sorceress are just plain old humans that can do some magic.
So that's about what I wanted to mention. So it's very creative, really like it, and also so many things, like so many characters, types, classes, warlocks, witches, mages, wizards, sorceresses. I was like, what is it?
Yeah, but also like fairies and pixies, which are
Yes,
very
there's
different.
so much crap in this. Like,
So it's amazing.
one of the main characters is a very buff pixie.
Yeah, pixie. No, it's not. He's a pixie and not a fairy, so it's
Is there
important.
a difference?
Yeah,
Oh my
he even
God.
talks about it.
Oh.
He constantly talks about it, and he's always getting mad about it.
Okay, so that's
And
even
he's
used
like,
in
there
the
are
story.
different. He even said it, and I think maybe she wrote it brilliantly in the fact that Rachel, the main character, kind of brushes it off, and so you are
Yes.
also brushing it off as you're
Yes,
thinking. But
that's
he
clever.
mentions it quite a bit.
Yeah, he's the most like annoying, constantly
But I like
yapping.
But I like what he says about Tinkerbell, and I swear it's in the first book, so either you missed it
Wasn't.
or it's in the second book.
in the
But
second
it's really
book.
funny.
This is gonna happen throughout this discussion because I read just the first one, and I think I want to read the second one because I enjoyed it a lot. So I recommend it in general. Before we move on to spoilers, there is one last thing that I want to mention. I think that it's funny how people constantly mention man stereotypes. Like if you read fantasy, hard sci-fi books, there's a bunch of stereotypes. There's fight zombies and be macho man and like play on FPS shooter game and all these like stereotypical men traits. Why do people never talk about the women stereotypical traits? This book is full of those, and it's kind of funny. It's kind of playing on it also. But I was like thinking about it, why don't people mind these? Or maybe it's because the women are very tolerant and they don't care about these things, and the men don't read these things, and that's why they never say these things. That's might be one of the most amusing parts that I'm going to spoil like one line, just like what the character did at one specific second, because I told Chan I was laughing at it, and it was when she wanted to relax. The main character wanted to relax, and she wanted to like have a evening for herself and just like enjoy herself as much as possible and reward herself. And I was like, so what is she going to do? And she was like, I'm going to splurge and I'm going to like have the best evening. So she said, I'm gonna have a bubble bath listen to jazz and have a piece of chocolate and glint wine or something. I was like, is that how you imagine a party? Like, like what? Excuse me?
But yeah, there are quite a bit of stereotypes in the book. But yeah, they're all like fun stereotypes. They're
not bad.
Stereotypes that make you enraged or anything like that.
It's very harmless and very fun. I just was thinking, like, why don't people talk about this more? Like, people constantly talk about the other stereotypes. But anyway.
I don't know. Oh yeah, I guess we should have mentioned, by the way, the whole urban fantasy thing, like how Philip said it's all in cities and stuff. Like, it's an actual place. The writer wrote about real places, so like you can visit some of the places that she actually mentioned. Not just the city, but like this restaurant, you can go to it, and like this hangout, you can go to it. So you can find them in real life if you're in that area. So it's kind of interesting. Cool. So. Yeah.
So to round this up, would you recommend this to people?
Yeah, I thought it was fun. I like it because it was like, I like fantasy type things, but I often really hate them being in like a medieval or something, like, or old earth kind of world. I think that's so boring for me. So I usually stick to supernatural because they can be anytime. So I liked that this one was in this time, but fantasy could work. Yeah. So I enjoyed.
I remember when the Hunger Games movie came out and I watched it and I was like, it's kind of fun. So I read all the 3 books like really quickly and it was super easy to read. And I think if this was filmed instead, I think it could have been potentially much more creative because the Hunger Games is just one premise and it's kind of like fun, but it's kind of like, okay. And this would have been much more
I wish
original.
That this could be like a series.
Like you mentioned a long time ago, there was a TV show called like Succubus something, right?
Oh, but
what's
like,
it called?
Lost Girl?
Lost
Maybe
Girl?
it's called Lost Girl. That was so bad. But that's like the super, ooper, duper, like if a cheap $1 romance novel was an urban fantasy, that's what Lost Girl is.
Yeah, it's awful.
So that's horrible.
So if they used that budget for this,
yeah,
it would actually
that would have been
fun.
really.
Like,
if this book had been made instead of Lost Girl, that would have been a great series.
Like I know these kind of stories, and I haven't read many of them. To be specific, I haven't read not any of them, like at all. I guess like this kind of, but I feel like this is not dumb. Like many of them are dumb. Like the Lost Girl is super dumb.
That one's really dumb. I'm gonna succubus you. Like that's like I'm gonna witch you. I'm gonna vampire you. That doesn't make any sense. So that was dumb.
It's basically a succubus that's gonna have sex with everybody, and there is no story, like no character development.
There's a story, but there's
there's
no.
So this story has a character arc, and it's got good characters, and it's not bad. Like it's not dumb. So I would recommend it. So if you've decided to read this, hit stop and come back after you've read it. We're gonna get into spoilers. If you're not reading this, we can give you like a overview of the story so you know what this is about if you don't want to read it. Let's do like a very short overview of the plot. I'm gonna go through it like step by step and talk about like stuff that I wanted to mention in between. The story starts with Rachel Morgan. She's assigned by the IS, the Inlander Security Company, to arrest a leprechaun who's a bartender. And I love this beginning of the book because the leprechaun is being arrested for fabricating a rainbow to get income and misinterpret the income for tax evasion, which I felt was very funny. So she gets in the bar and tries to arrest the leprechaun, and the leprechaun tries to escape, and she puts handcuffs on the leprechaun, and the handcuffs like shrink as the leprechaun is shrinking to accommodate for the size, and she wouldn't escape, and everybody's upset about it. It's very creative. I like that part. And she has a sidekick, like a co-worker or best friend called Jenks, the pixie.
At first, they're not really friends.
No, they're co-workers.
Just assigned to each other, like sort of like partners.
So Jenks is flying around to survey the area and tells her where to go, what to do, and he always sits on her earrings because he's super small and things like that, hides in her hair, and it's fun. And they arrest this leprechaun, and they start talking about how the leprechaun can grant 3 wishes, which is the first example of me being kind of upset and kind of interested at the same time. Like, okay, what does it mean? Like, how does it come? What is this? Isn't explained, which is good. It's not explained that much. But basically, you can wish 3 things. And because Rachel Morgan is very upset with her job and has been assigned like super stupid tasks and just wants to quit, she wants to use one of the wishes to just set the leprechaun free and quit the company and just do things on her own. The partner we mentioned, Jenks, the pixie, and another partner called Ivy, that's the vampire. They both hear of it and they both decide to also quit because they also hate the company and form like a new team and new company and new job and just make a living for themselves. So they each decide to use one wish from the leprechaun and then let the leprechaun go. And the wishes were from Rachel to pay off the debt or to quit without repercussions, which didn't make any sense to me because it didn't work at all.
Yeah, but it's how you make wishes that matter.
That's what I meant by it. None of this is explained like how that works.
Well, I meant, but it's a general rule in real life, unless this is Disney's Aladdin, how you make wishes matter. So what you've said and what you ask for.
Yeah, so this was very confusing to me, and they even complained about it in the story because somebody wished something from the leprechaun, and the leprechaun complained like, "Oh, this is not so easy to do." And I was like, "So is the leprechaun literally going to go there and do it, or is this like a magic? What's happening?" But never mind, not important.
I think they explained it enough in a way that, like, it wasn't enough, but it was an appropriate amount of enough.
Yeah. It's okay, but if you're a person who likes to pick apart stories and like find loopholes and like be infuriatingly like, excuse me, on line 7 they didn't say this, you're gonna hate this book.
I would say that you should just stick to sci-fi. This is meant for the people that want...
So my answer to all these problems that are gonna come up is just relax. It's okay.
just relax.
But what I didn't like was that, okay, she wished she will be let go without any problems, and there is this whole thing that the Inlander Security, the IS she's working for, they cannot let her loose because she would cause problems. I don't know why. She knows about the company, or I don't know. But basically they put a bounty on her head to catch her or kill her. I don't even know what the IS wants to do with her. I guess they want to kill her.
They were just mad at her, basically.
Yeah.
She wanted to quit with no repercussions involving her contract and all those types of things.
Maybe in that sense it was logical.
That was what she had asked for.
Because I remember she said something like, "I don't want to be caught," in quotation marks. Following what she did was the dumbest shit. She immediately went to her boss to say she quits. I was like, why did she even go there? Just leave. And immediately almost gets killed and caught. And I was like, why did she... Okay. She's just... she's just being, the person we mentioned we should not say the name of. And so she gets attacked by 2 people. She has to like knock them out or something. She nearly escapes, and so that's how the story starts. This is when she's super proud of herself and gonna make a bubble bath with slow jazz to relax. And what happens next is the main character, Morgan, Ivy, and Jenks, they get into this new area to set up their new like base for operations. It's a church, and they start like getting to know each other and living together. We get a very, very sexually charged, very detailed Ivy Rachel like seduction scene, which is not seduction at all. I was laughing at this so much. Do you remember that? Yeah. So she is a vampire, and she's trying not to drink blood, even though she wants to, and she's like not using or whatever they say in the book.
Using is drinking blood.
Yeah, and I guess Rachel smells too nice, and she made a bunch of mistakes that are super irresistible to vampires, which I was like, what are those things? I was told very much in detail. She's handed the book, and she's like, excuse me, read this book on how to seduce a vampire, and don't do these things. And they... And she's like, okay, so rule number 1, don't smell like a vampire. I was like, what? So rule number 2, don't wash your clothes with the clothes of a vampire, and they will mix the scents, and that's infuriatingly arousing to a vampire. I was like, what? So it was funny. And then there's like...
Don't ask about their family and stuff. She kept asking about her family, so she was really into that.
So what's the best conversation foreplay for a vampire? Talk about your bloodlines, family, past ties, and like ancestors. So I was like, what? So you come up to a vampire, I was like, who's your grandfather? And you're like, oh, kiss me.
I like that the writer did all those things because I think it really is making fun of like how the sexualized all that's ever talked about with vampires in stories are exactly their bloodline or some saint or whatever. So she at least turned it into, well, this is why.
It was it was exactly my thought process. I started reading it and I was like, oh my god, it's gonna happen immediately. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And are they gonna explain? Are they explaining it? And then oh, it's actually funny. So I was like.
So I enjoyed that was explained.
Another rule I have here is that if you want to have a good foreplay with vampires, you have to eat crunchy food to loosen the jaw and get your saliva flowing, such as apples or chips.
Yeah. It was great. I love all of her vampire book thing.
And also there is like a forbidden chapter that involves mutilation, like, and horrible things that people like to do for fun with sex play.
Yeah.
And she is reading this on the bus, and people are like looking over her shoulder, reading how vampires like cut their arms off to get aroused or something. I was like, that was funny.
And some dude was like, "Yeah, you should try this position, whatever." And like, and she's like,
So that was great. So I enjoyed that part very much. It was a big surprise to me because the part of the whole book that I was dreading to read and get into was the most like creatively funny. So I appreciate it very much. So this is throughout the whole book, they constantly get into tension with Ivy and Rachel, and Ivy is like trying to be like reserved and not get into things, and Rachel is constantly freaking out that Ivy is gonna bite her and do stuff together.
it's like a big thing, like how all the humans don't like any of these magic creatures. All of these magic creatures are really like wary of vampires. Like they don't quite understand what goes on with them, and they don't always think they can trust them, so they're constantly literally watching their backs. So yeah.
Yep. So Rachel is being pursued by the IS, and the IS has put a big bounty on her head, and they're sending assassins and like people to, I guess, just kill her. I wasn't sure what they actually wanted.
Yeah.
I guess they just want to kill her.
Yeah, they're just mad at her. That's it.
So we get a bunch of fights, like Jenks, the pixie. So he's got a family and they live in the garden, and he's super proud that they have a garden for themselves and they can like sit on flowers and stuff, which is super cute. And his wife looks like an angel and she can like heal people. And
but they have like lots of kids.
Yeah, lots of kids and
like a lot of kids.
And at one point of the story, we see Jenks up close from a different point of view, and we found out that he's like super beautiful, lush hair, like buff, and he's irresistible. That's why he's got like 700 kids or something.
Yeah. Him and his wife are both like
the most beautiful creatures.
Yeah, and then they keep having all these kids. It's got literally. They say the number at one point, but if they didn't say it here, I won't spoil it. They have a lot of kids.
And the rules again are very blurry. Like Jenks get almost killed multiple times, and they like tore up his wings, and it just regenerates. So I guess it's magic.
Yeah, like pixies and those kind of things, like small creatures, kind of like in our world, like smaller people just aren't treated very well. So like even in this world, like even the main character doesn't really treat him that well, but she has given him more than others. Like giving her yard to him is a huge deal because they usually don't have much space. So it was enough.
So I guess there's a lot of discrimination. They just don't shove it in your face like in other stories, but it's just a thing that is inevitable, unavoidable. So this is like the basis for their operations, which they say at the beginning that they want to do like a company or like a service to help people with inlanders or magical creatures outside of the IS, so they can like do contract work for, they never said what, I guess arresting people, solving crimes, problems.
Their own, like, kind of like their own investigative, or they're basically like mercenaries, but not necessarily violent. Just, you can hire them for anything.
And they named their company. And I didn't write down the name, but it's ridiculous.
I don't remember.
At one point of the book, one of the main characters picks up the phone and they're like, "Hello, this is Vampire Charms and Sexy Butts. How can I help you?" I was like, what? It's something ridiculous, and they even mention it in the book that it's the worst name ever. I think it's like Vampire Charms and Witches. I don't know.
Don't they get like some calls that they're not expecting?
They actually get some potential customer calls, and they never do any customer at all at a single time. The whole book, nothing is.
But I thought they got like wrong, like kind of like I thought they had like a weird name, and they got like the wrong like
it's
kind
all
of
a
calls
mess.
or something.
So the whole story of this book is, so after this starts, it's like the first, 10% of the book, and then the rest of the book is just Rachel, the main character, trying to get out of this like bounty. And it's I was like, what is this book going to be about? And it wasn't about like anything than her trying to steal secret information or trying to pin something on somebody so she can get away from this bounty. And it was the whole story. And I was kind of disappointed because it was the same plot point like 5 times. because she gets like an idea to sneak into somebody's office, steal some information and sell it, or find somebody and like give him to the FBI, and she like 5 times tries to like disguise herself and get somewhere, and 5 times she gets caught. I was like,
she's
fuck.
so bad at it.
So the whole book is just her failing at the same thing 5 times, and I was like, okay. But then the second half of the book, more things happen, so I wasn't disappointed. I was just like, it's kind of the same premise. And every time she failed, immediately she went to do it again. And I was like, why don't you just wait a week or something? And she was like escalating, and it was like worse and worse, and she was failing harder and harder. I was like, just stop it. That's why.
Yeah, but all this stuff, it's like a typical first book syndrome, I'll say, is that everything, like the main story, yes, she's trying to get this bounty, but all of those silly things that she did, like the whole time in this book, all of those side things or pieces of things really build up in the other books.
Okay.
Like everything that she has done has a consequence, and so they all branch out into some pretty creative stories. So yeah.
That's good. Yeah, so I'm interested. I will be interested in reading the next one. But to move on with the plot, just to finish up this recap. So I think at first she wants to go back to her previous job and dig up some secret information, some dirt on her boss, but that fails. And she does that again or something that fails. And then the next like 3 attempts revolve around this menacing character, Trent Kalamek. And Trent Kalamek, it's ridiculous. He's like a super suave villain, boss, like macho man. Like every time they describe him, it's ridiculous. And he's wanted by the FBI and he's wanted by the IS, which they can't get him because he's just secretly like doing illegal things, and he's got all the minions and lackeys and like all the money and power. So she wants to sneak into his office and dig up some information so she can just hand him over to the IS, which I don't know how that would even happen, because I guess if she finds something that they can legally prove, then the IS can arrest him.
But it's more like she's trying to trade off something bigger than herself to get out of her. Yes. So, like, she's just going in over her head, but she's thinking if she makes something like a catch that's worth more than her, she can decide who to give it to. Like, if she gave it to FBI, she was thinking, like, they can protect her from the other thing. But if she gives it to IS, she thought, okay, they let it go. Like, this is over with. So she was trying to just bring in something big. Because there was no getting out of this bounty at all.
So her most cunning plan, like attempt 3, is to turn into a mink. Which we discussed. What's the difference between a stout mink, feathered, civet?
They're all polecats.
So one of those. I can't tell which one's which, but they're all super cute.
Yeah. So she's even described really cute, in the way she's like touching her body and checking her fur is real cute.
So we get into like the transformation procedure, and she has to find like a bunch of fur and some blood and all this, like to make this like amulet. In all this book they have like magic amulets. You can like put over somebody's neck and it puts them to sleep, or she can like numb the pain with the amulet or something. So she has a transformation amulet. It'll turn her into a mink, and she wanted to be a mouse, but she got owl like thrown up pellets of shit, and she just got some like fur from somebody's like pet owl that she just burped out, and she didn't know what animal, so it's an accident. She's a mink. So anyway, she gets transformed, and along with Jenks, the pixie, they sneak into Trent Kalamek's office, and they're trying to steal something, and surprise, they're caught again. So Trent puts her into a cage, and he's trying to make her work for him, and they have these conversations, but she is just locked up in a cage watching him do stuff, and he kills some people, and he's super menacing.
But she also can't talk as a mink, but he knows like it's her, but like she makes kind of cute gestures. Not really, but everything she does is cute because she's a mink.
Yeah. And there's this secretary who doesn't know any better, and she keeps feeding her carrots, and the other people keep beating her up, and there's like this coworker of Trent that keeps like poking her with a stick and with a pencil, and she keeps breaking the pencils. But anyway, while this all is going on, this like super mean boss who kills people and is like so menacing, she is looking at him and she's like, he smells so nice. Look at his butt. This muscular back. Oh my god, he's bent over and he's how did he have his body? Oh my god. was like, damn it. So that was ridiculous. This happens multiple times in the book. In the final climax, somebody goes to buy chocolate, and they're like, "Oh, look at Nick. Nick is also kind of a hunky boy."
Yeah.
I was like, "What?"
I think she's like basically lonely. That's the point. She's a lonely witch.
So that's what I mean by this story. It's like it gets really like gory and like bloody in parts, but while that's all happening, it's like, aha, he's got a nice butt. So it's like. It's got a very light-hearted tone to it. So, because she has already tried to steal stuff from him like twice, or I don't know how many times, he's decided to put her into red fights. Illegal red fights underground where people bet on reds fighting. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter, she's a mink, I guess. So she's just gonna fight. And I didn't expect this part at all. I think it's my favorite part of the book. That's when I started to like it, and until the end it was great. So she is dreading it and super scared, and she gets into this fight, and the other red runs at her. They start biting each other and fighting, and people are betting money on them. And maybe you can talk a bit if you want.
It just turns out that she realizes that the other participant is also like hers, was not actually like a rat or whatever. And I don't remember what exactly had happened, but I think he had figured it out first, the other one, and it was looking at her, and it was touching its wounds in order, and she was like, "Oh, like damn, double damn." he remembers, and then and she's like, "Oh, he's also like human or something." And so then they fight some more, but at one point he like kind of attacks. One of them is pretending to die, but
they're trying to mimic each other at first and try to communicate without saying anything, squeaking at each other.
Yeah,
so to pretend like they're fighting.
Yeah, so I think like he ends up like catching her or something, and like he bites down a little bit harder or something to like make her or one of them pretend not to like so
because it's a fight to the death, but they don't want to die.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yes, they somehow figure out that it's best for them to both pass out at the same time. So they are covered in blood and they're just passing out, and the crowd is going mad, and they're like, "Oh my god, it's the first draw," and both dying, bet more money, and everybody's like, "Oh my god!" So they both fall over, and they're like, "Oh, they both died and are bleeding out." And as soon as somebody tries to get them out of the cage of the fighting arena, they jump out and start running away.
Yeah.
So they bite the hands and they escape, and Jenks finds them and they helps them find a way to escape, and they're all rescued and they survived. So that was like a huge fight, and turns out that this red she fought, his fight name was like Blood Baron or something.
Yeah, it was something like the Bloody Baron or something.
So his Nick is like a normal person. He was turned into a red to die. But immediately...
But he's a human.
He's human.
Yeah, he's not a witch or anything.
Immediately they want to like get it on, but they can't, they don't, and everybody's making fun of it, that they are attracted to each other with the main character. That's the guy that gives her chocolate and she's checking out his butt in the meantime. So they're all battered up and they're all like scarred and everything. And immediately, I think it's the same day, she's like, "Okay, let's sneak in there again. Let's steal again. Let's go to Tranquil next office again." And I was like, "What? Are you serious?" Every single time they escaped after being caught, immediately she does it again. Like immediately.
In the book, constantly Ivy and Jenks are both like saying to her like sometimes they agree with her and other times they're like, "Are you sure you want to do blah blah blah?" Or especially Ivy, like a lot of times, like if Jenks and Rachel are on the same page about something, usually Ivy is saying something else and neither of them trust her and they don't know why she's saying the thing. But
yes, other stuff happens that we won't get into, like group of gangster pixies attack them and Jenks beat them to show that he's a man, and he beat 7 pixies just 1-on-7 or something. Yeah. So before they attack again, she wants to get better at casting spells, so she wants to steal some black magic spells in the library to be like prepared to assault people better, I guess, with spells, because Nick has some connections. He can like get into the library because he used to work there. So they get into this underground and she has to study some of the spells. But suddenly she's attacked by a super sexy demon that can turn into anything. And he's been summoned by somebody. She thinks it's Trent Kalamek, but it turns out it isn't.
But he's got weird eyes. He's got goat eyes.
The description of this demon is amazing. I like this part a lot. So at first he's like a fiery lion dog, something with goat eyes on fire. And he immediately morphs into like a suave Japanese businessman with anime face or something. Then he morphs into like a bunch of other characters. And what he's trying to do is to scare her, or like he's just playing with her because he cannot be killed basically. Finally he finds that the thing that Rachel is the most scared of is Ivy, so he turns into Ivy and he starts sucking her blood, pretending to be a vampire, and he puts super arousing magical saliva in her blood that makes her enjoy it. So she's like moaning in pleasure while he's killing her, sucking her blood. Sexual attention points +7. And Nick is like trying to stop it, but he can't. Everybody's like bloodied up. This scene is super gory. And finally, Nick picks up a magic book and he casts a spell to like trap the demon in a circle of blood that he painted on the floor. That means the demon is freed of his purpose of killing Rachel. And now he can do whatever, he can just leave, which is another one of those points where it's like, okay, there's all these rules about demons and we don't know anything, and now it's just like being used in the story. That happens constantly, and I'm like, okay.
That's the point.
Yeah.
I think that, like you said before, have anything would be in another order, that would be so boring. If they were like, so Nick remembered that if you did blah, 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 you could stop this demon. So then he proceeded to do blah, blah, blah. So...
So we learn a bunch of interesting stuff about demons, which I assume demons come up more in the sequels, maybe? Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah, that's great.
Demons are probably one of the coolest creatures in the whole book series, and they get insane.
Yeah.
Insane.
No, I'm very much looking forward to that. That's very well set up. So one of the facts is that if this demon does something for you, that you owe him like a favor, and that's signified by a charm or mark or scar or tattoo or something on your skin. So she gets like torn apart, almost dies, and she's got a bunch of just wounds with bleeding everywhere over the body, and it won't stop bleeding unless you repay the favor. And if you don't say to the demon that you are willing to do something for the demon, it will just bleed. And as soon as you say like, okay, I will do it for you, I don't know what that is, but I will do something for you, the scars will magically seal up, and there will be like a magical seal mark on them, which is like, okay, remember that you have to repay the demon. So that was interesting. I like that idea, because she was bleeding out and they were trying to heal her, and then they couldn't heal the hand because it was completely torn apart and still bleeding. And somebody was like, oh yeah, that will not stop bleeding unless you do that. And she was like, what do I have to do to like do that? And she was like, you just have to think it and say it. And she was like, okay, so I'll do it, and it immediately stops. So it's kind of fun or creative that she just has to say it, like decide it, and that's what does it. So demons are summoned from the ever after. Is that like afterlife or hell?
It's still explained more in other books, but I can just tell you, like, the ever after is a really interesting place, and I think by the second book she lets you know how you can see it. But all magical creatures, or most magical creatures, used to live just in the ever after.
Oh, I see.
It's like the same plane, and she talks about at one point like how you can see it, and she was like, you can sort of like close your eyes but not really close your eyes, and you start to see this other like, and it's there, it's exactly always like there, but unless you're looking for it, you can't see it. So there's buildings, houses, structures, there's all these things that are there, but I suppose in this world, if you're not looking for it, you're not necessarily going to run into those things, but if you're trying to see it, you will see it, and there's other stuff that's there. So like demons and like rare fairy tale type creatures, think like elves, even pixies, and those usually live in the ever after. I think they even make a reference even to like the Snow White story, like happily ever, like the phrase what happily ever after means, like really means, and the ever after is just kind of another plane of existence. It's right on top of this one.
Another thing I didn't understand, and I'm sure you're gonna say again, it's in the next book or something, it's the ley line. So you can cast a more powerful spell, but you have to tap into a ley line.
A ley line in general, in all stories, there's other stories with ley lines. A ley line is just a line that's thought to exist to go through, I think, connects at least three important points. It's a line that's thought to be able to be drawn through three significant, maybe, for example, historical locations in antiquity, or like some line could be drawn What it means is if you're tracing this line, you can find really important information about some entity. I guess, for example, if you're following nomads and you found a ley line, you would find those points at which you could describe parts of their history that were really important.
I see. So she got battered up in a red mink fight. After that, she got torn apart by a demon and bled out after being sucked dry and being aroused and terrified to death. Just completely, she cannot even stand up. She's just passing out. She cannot eat because she would throw up. She's like having all the healing powers. Let's not get into it. She's just almost died. What is she going to do?
A bubble bath.
Okay, what is she going to do after the bubble bath? She did get a bubble bath.
Did she? I
Yes,
forgot.
that's true. And Nick was naked after a shower, and she was sexual points, sexual tension points, like 7, 8, 9, 10.
I forgot what she did.
So you would think there will be a new idea that she might do. What does she decide to do? She will steal things from Trent Kelmek. Again, she will break into his office.
Well, would he be thinking she'd be back? I mean, she was just a mink and caught there for like weeks.
So how does she get into the office? She
walks
turns into a mink. Damn it!
Yeah,
I was like,
true.
what? It's the
That's true.
same shit again, like immediately. I thought she
true.
would have like post-traumatic disorder after being battered as a mink because she stayed in the shape of a
This
mink
time
for
someone
like a
would
long
know
time.
that she was gonna be in there and like, but I mean, I guess someone would know before, but like this time they knew what he was up to, and I don't know.
It's insane. It's insane. So she turns herself into a mink. They drive into her office. She gets in there. It's like, oh my god. Wow. Well, anyway, maybe I'm messing this up. She's not, after she got battered up as a demon, that was already after she tried to get in the second time as a mink. But anyway, just tries to do the same again. But while she was a mink, she listened to him and she overheard that he's developing bio drugs, trading with them and stuff. So she wants to pin that on him and give him to the FBI or IS and just finally clear herself of the bounty. So they decide to send Ivy to the FBI and tell them all this. In the meantime, she's dying after the attack. It turns out that the FBI is fed up with vampires. Ivy has like almost killed half of the police station or something. Jenks also is arrested, so she has to go there. She's almost cannot even walk. She's just going there like half dead. And she heard there was going to be a meeting where they're gonna trade the bio drugs. So they finally head out and they wanna catch them trading the drugs.
Right.
So finally, the end, they find this guy, Francis, they follow him into this like bus station or something. Basically secretly ship the boxes with the bio drugs. And they get attacked by everything. There's like 3 mages casting spells and the FBI starts shooting and she keeps like kicking people and Francis is falling on the floor and she's like half dead. In the meantime, she's tired, so Nick gets chocolate and she looks at his butt and this goes up.
Okay.
And this is the moment where the sorceresses and all the witches get punched in the face to stop casting, which I liked a lot. Just a super fight. Everybody is battered and almost dies. But they get the bio drugs and they get the informant so they can finally arrest Trent Kelmek. But Trent Kelmek is like, ha ha ha, I'm gonna explode this car, and the informant dies and he gets away.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the book. And before the book really ends, what does she do?
Does a bubble bath.
No, she decides to sneak into Trent Kelmek's office and steal something. And I was like, fuck me. The last chapter of the book after this super fight is her going to steal
Well, he's
shit.
gone now.
No, he's not. He
Well,
is
she
in the
thought
office.
she's-
No,
Oh.
the reason she's going back into office is because she looked into his eyes into a car while he was driving away from the explosion where he killed all these people. And she thought that he's gonna kill her next. So that's why she has to sneak in as a mink and steal something. I was like, fuck.
There are quite a few things in that book that like, but I think that's why I like the character, because you're supposed to know that she's, put it this way, all this BS that she's doing, like for instance, at the beginning, like how her immediate boss doesn't really like her or whatever, and she's always like butting heads. Why do you think this boss doesn't like her? You haven't seen now through this entire book, all the bullshit that she's always doing. This is why they hate her. This is why they want to kill her. Yeah. Because she's kind of an idiot and she does what she wants to do, but she's not really thinking about it. And she realizes she's been an idiot later, but she can't piece together that this is exactly why that they don't like her. So this is why. This is why.
You're
staying true to her character. This is exactly, it's setting you up and letting you know this is exactly why she was unwelcome in the first place.
So the book ends with her standing in Trent Kellemek's office, sneaking to steal some more information about him. Mm-hmm. Which doesn't even make sense because she already knows that she's training to... Anyway, I guess there's still more stuff to steal. And surprise, he comes back into the office and she's like, oh, I smell him again. What a manly, super nice smell. Sexual tension points. And and he points a gun at her and she's like, oh, I have some guys on the ceiling and they're gonna shoot you dead. And nobody's there and he's like, oh, it might be dead. And they have this ridiculous conversation and then she escapes with this like diskette floppy drive or something. Yeah. So the real reason why he let her go, because he's not an idiot, is because he thought that she summoned a demon because he got attacked by a demon. Mm-hmm. But she didn't summon him and he doesn't know who summoned the demon.
Right.
In the meantime, she thought that when she released the demon, he would come back and attack the person who summoned him. And that wasn't Trent Kellemek, so somebody else summoned the demon to kill her. And we don't know who, and we don't know who attacked Trent Kellemek, and the book ends.
So they set up a pretty good mystery.
So I really liked it. I really enjoyed the last quarter, the action and all this fights with the mages and turning into minks and red fights. It was great. I had a lot of fun with it. It was very fun to read. I just hated that she had to do and steal stuff from the office 5 times.
That's pretty insane.
So I hope the sequels, they do other things than sneak into offices.
I don't remember what's going on, but I think there was a lot less sneaking.
I don't mind sneaking. I just don't want to go into an office like a mink.
I think there's less minking around.
I hope so. That's what I want. So it was a lot of fun. I would like to see this TV show or movie or something. But
I would like to see it in a series. I'd never like to see it in a movie because there's lots that go on. Definitely with all of her nonsense of keep doing this breaking in, there's lots of, climaxes in there that could be broken into episodes.
Yeah, that's true. It will be fun episodes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So it was first published in 2004. So I think if it was to be picked up for a TV show, it already would have been. So
yeah, but
I guess it's not happening.
I think if more people knew about it, maybe it's interesting.
It was definitely much better than I expected. So thanks for recommending it. Mm-hmm. Thanks for talking, helping me unravel and mink around and stuff. So that was first episode with Chan about books. Coming up, maybe Chan's mom on the podcast sometime.
She's read everything, so take your pick.
So in the future, we might do the second and third book with Chan, and then book 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, up to 16 with Chan's mom. So if you're into it, I'd be happy to see you again on some other episode. And thanks for talking.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Coming up on the next episode, Starship Troopers by Robert Anson Heinlein. So please rate us on Apple Podcasts and join us on the next exciting episode where Paul came back, not Paulo, but Paul. So tune in to hear 2 old men, grumpy old men, complaining about youth. It was loads of fun to record that episode.